Okay, good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock, so I will get us started. I will call our regular city council meeting being held at the Richfield Municipal Center of October 12, 2021 to order. The first item is the Pledge of Allegiance, so all of you who are able to stand, please do so and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item is our open forum. So I will just pass it over to our analyst, Executive Analyst Wynn, to just explain how people can participate in the open forum.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, we always encourage residents to attend our meetings in person if they're able and to address their comments with council. You can also dial 612-861-0651 during our meetings in our open forum portion to have your comments heard by council. You can also email me ahead of time and have your comments read by a staff member. You can email kwynn@richfieldmn.gov. You can also call me and leave me a voicemail at 612-861-9711, and we can have your comments read by a staff person. Again, if you would like to call in now and have your comments heard by council during the live meeting, you can call 612-861-0651. I currently do not have anybody on the line.
All right, thank you, Executive Analyst Wynn. Sorry, not Executive Analyst, Administrative Assistant Wynn. I do also just want to remind folks, I do know we have some people here in the council chambers. I know at least one person is here for one of our public hearings. We have multiple public hearings tonight. So just as a reminder to folks, the open forum right now is for any items that are not on the council agenda if it's not a public hearing item and you want to speak and address the council, you can do that during the open forum part, which is the portion of the meeting right now. So is anybody here in person who is here who would like to address the council on an issue not related to our public hearings that are on the agenda tonight? Are you Brett Smith? Yeah. And then you're here about the disease tree, so one of the items on our agenda. Nope, so right now, you will have an opportunity to speak at the public hearing for that item, so you don't have to speak up yet. We'll call your item and then, yep. Thank you so much. Anybody else here in person or anyone on the phone that would like to speak to address the council in the open forum? Again, as a reminder, it's just the opportunity to address the council on any item you'd like and items that are not included in public hearings on our council agenda. Executive Assistant Wynn, is there anyone on the line?
Mayor, I do not have anybody on the phone.
Okay, I'll wait a little longer and then I'll go close the open forum. All right, seeing as we have nobody here in person or on the phone for the open forum, I will close the open forum and move to the next item. The next item is the approval of the minutes of the City Council work session of September 28th, 2021, and the City Council meeting of September 28th, 2021.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Councilmember Supple, second.
Thank you. Councilmember Whalen has made the motion to approve the minutes, and Councilmember Supple has seconded the motion to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The minutes have been approved. The next item is the approval of the agenda.
Go ahead.
Hayford O'Leary, move approval.
Supple, second.
The agenda has been moved by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary and seconded by Councilmember Supple. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda has been approved. The next item is a consent calendar and goes to City Manager Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor. The consent calendar contains several separate items which are acted upon by the City Council in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved. No further council action on these items is necessary. On tonight's consent calendar, item A, consider the approval of a resolution for reimbursement of certain expenditures from the proceeds of street reconstruction bonds to be issued by the city for the 65th Street Reconstruction Project. Item B, consider the approval of a resolution requesting a MnDOT state aid design element variance for the 65th Street Reconstruction Project. Item C, consider a resolution approving an amphitheater agreement with Benefactor Brewing LLC. And I submit these three items for your consideration as part of the consent.
Supple, I will move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
The consent calendar motion has been made by Councilmember Supple and seconded by Councilmember Wayland. Are there comments or questions from council on the consent calendar? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The consent calendar has been approved. The next item goes to Councilmember Supple.
Thank you. This item is a public hearing and consideration of the adoption of a resolution approving the 5-year street reconstruction plan from 2022 to 2026 and authorizing the issuance of street reconstruction bonds to finance the 2022 to 2023 65th Street Reconstruction Project. Joe Powers, city engineer, will present the 5-year reconstruction plan prior to the public hearing. Then we'll move into the public hearing after that. The city is authorized under Minnesota statutes to prepare a plan for street reconstruction in order to issue general obligation bonds to finance the cost of the identified projects. Staff has prepared a plan for the purposes of utilizing the general obligation bonds known as street reconstruction bonds to finance the work in place of special assessments or other funding options. The 65th Street Reconstruction Project is included in the proposed plan and resolution authorizing issuance of up to $6,500,000 in street reconstruction bonds. For planning purposes, the plan also identifies potential future projects for reconstruction within the next 5 years. A project's inclusion in the plan does not require or guarantee that it will be constructed in the designated year. Additional projects in the plan that identify street reconstruction bonds for future funding are 69th Street West, 70th Street, and 76th Street West. It is important to note that the bond authorization resolution for the reconstruction only authorizes the sale of $6,500,000 in street reconstruction bonds for the 65th Street Reconstruction Project. The other projects in the plan that identify street reconstruction bonds for funding would be required to go through the same public hearing process prior to bidding or construction. So at this point, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Powers, the city engineer, to present the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Supple. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for allowing me to present the 5-year street reconstruction plan to you tonight. The presentation I'm going to give tonight is essentially a summarized version of the presentation that was given at your budget work session earlier this summer, with the main focus being on the 65th Street reconstruction and the process for issuing the street reconstruction bonds, which we are asking for approval tonight. So a very brief overview of the projects that are in our 5-year plan currently, starting with a couple of projects that are underway now. The 77th Street underpass kicked off earlier this summer. It's going well, I'm happy to share. We're moving along quite nicely, and we're scheduled for about another 2 years of construction on that project before it's complete and the underpass opens to the public. A smaller project is our traffic signal controller upgrades. We're starting just some of the planning for that. We're not likely to have construction implemented this year. We'll likely implement all of that next year. Essentially, that is upgrading some of our street signals, our streetlight signals along 76th and 77th Street in preparation for the 494 upcoming construction. The focus tonight will be on the 65th Street reconstruction project that is planned for construction in 2022 and 2023. That's one thing I'd like to highlight with you, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation, that we are extending that to a 2-year construction project, which was not previously the plan until very recently. Next, we have the 77th and Lindell traffic signal replacement. We're scheduling that for construction next year. That signal is currently at the end of its life cycle, and so we'll be replacing that ahead of the 494 project. We're planning to install rectangular rapid flashing beacons, RFBs, at the Richfield Parkway roundabout on 66th Street next year. That will bring all of our major roundabouts up to a better standard with RFBs at all of those crossings. And then the last 4 projects on here are a little bit further out: 69th Street, 70th Street, and 76th Street reconstruction projects. We don't have any detailed plans in the works for those yet, so they're essentially placeholders in our capital project plan at the moment. And lastly, we have the Trunk Highway 62 noise wall, which will be a MnDOT-led project to install a noise wall, and that should actually say 2025 on that. And that will be on the western side of town between Xerxes and Penn Avenue on the south side of Highway 62. A little bit hard to see on this slide, but this is included in your packets. This is the funding outlook for all of the projects that I just identified for our 5-year street reconstruction plan. Of particular interest tonight is the 65th Street reconstruction project. You may notice that the estimated cost for this project has increased since the last time you saw it a few months ago. A couple reasons for that. The largest one being the immensely complicated and complex utility infrastructure along 65th Street, and some of the work that we're planning to implement to improve flooding conditions. And we're doing that, as you know, by installing a very large concrete box culvert in the roadway, which, besides being expensive on its own, presents a lot of challenges with navigating the existing public and private utility infrastructure that's underneath that roadway. So, unfortunately, as we've developed more final designs and cost estimates, that cost has increased some. I will note also in your packet is our project sources and uses summary, which outlines how those costs break down. And I would like to note that presented to you earlier this summer for a street reconstruction bond issuance amount, we were estimating $6.1 million. We have increased that to $6.5 million. However, we do believe that we're more likely to be around that $6.1 million mark for the bond issuance that we'll actually need when bids come in next year. But our estimates at this point do include a 20% contingency. And upon the recommendation of Ellers, our financial consultant, we've included the bond issuance costs into the bond amount. Those come in at probably around $200,000 per our financial consultant. So those were not reflected in the estimate that you saw a couple months ago. So that's one of the reasons for that increase. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about the street reconstruction bond process. So one of the motions that we're asking the council to consider tonight is approving the sale of the bonds contingent on a 30-day reverse referendum period. So you'll see here the steps that are laid out to complete the street reconstruction bond issuance process. The first step is to adopt a 5-year street reconstruction plan. That is what the council will take action and do tonight in adopting the plan. The public hearing is where we are exactly in this moment. This is the public hearing for the street reconstruction plan and the bond issuance. Immediately following this evening, we start a 30-day reverse referendum period. This is a 30-day period required by state statute, in which if the public or any member of the public were to file with our city clerk a petition with at least 5% of the amount of votes cast in the last general municipal election, contesting the sale of the street reconstruction bonds, the city would be required to conduct a public referendum asking for a vote from the entire city as to whether the city should issue those bonds, and would only be able to issue those bonds if that referendum were passed. Following that process, either we don't have that petition submitted in the reverse referendum. If that's not submitted, then automatically the approval is approved after 30 days from council to issue the bonds. Final step would be over the next couple months, we'll prepare the final plans for the project. And then in early 2022, we will advertise and accept bids from contractors for the construction project. And we would then sell the bonds based on those final bid amounts and our final project design costs that would be determined after those bids are received. The last thing I just want to talk about real quick is, as I mentioned, we're now looking at pushing the construction schedule for that project to 2 years. The main driver being the complexity of the underground utility construction, because it is going to be such a large project and very large infrastructure that's going to be going into the ground. We expect that work to progress a little more slowly than some less invasive projects would be. The good news is we think we have a pretty well identified breakpoint along the project corridor where we can stage the project such that the majority of construction activity in front of any individual property would only occur over one season. So we would essentially construct probably the west 2/3 or so of the project in 2022 and completely finalize that portion of the project, including the roadway construction, the roundabout at 65th and Lindell, and all of the utilities in that portion. Button it all up for winter so it's drivable and safe, and then pick up in that same spot and move further east, but not have to go back on the west side of the project and impact those residents and those businesses for more than one construction season. And then just a very quick summary of the project. You've seen this slide before. Just really summarizing, the 65th Street project will be a full street reconstruction from Nicollet Avenue to Ray Drive, and we're doing some pavement and striping improvements on Lindell Avenue. Council approved the preliminary design in July 2020, and we've been working on towards final design since then. We're getting quite close. I'm expecting 90% plans from our consultant in the next few weeks. And then lastly, we have the estimated cost is now at $11 million. I already explained the increase in the street reconstruction bonds, and the remainder of the project would be funded with utility bonds. The debt service on that would be paid out of our utility fund. And then lastly, a breakdown prepared by Ellers for us, which illustrates the tax increase for homes of varying values in order to issue the $6.5 million street reconstruction bond. So the example that I prepared for you down at the bottom is for a house with a $300,000 value, approximately an annual increase on their property taxes of $31.66 each year for 20 years to pay this debt service. That concludes my presentation. I will stand for questions or comments from the council and remain here to respond to any questions from the public as part of the public hearing.
Thank you for that presentation. Are there comments or questions from the council members on the presentation? Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
Just one question with the 65th Street split. Is the Lindale work part of year one, or would that be delayed till year two?
Yeah, Councilmember Hayford O'Leary, we'll have to finalize that. We're not exactly sure, but where we're thinking at this point is likely the railroad tracks, around the railroad tracks at Pleasant Avenue. An additional consideration there is some of the complexities working with the railroad and the rail company. There's actually two different entities that we have to coordinate there with, and our fear was keeping this project as 1 year if there were any delays caused by the railroad or the rail company there, that could push that project too far into winter trying to get it done in 1 year. So by splitting it there, we can kind of mitigate some of that risk with any delays caused on their end, where we could hopefully have a little bit of cushion in our schedule at the end of 2022 or beginning of 2023 for them to complete their work and not delay our our contractor.
Okay, thank you. And then I also just wanted to reiterate a question that I asked previously, but the descriptions of the project in the 5-year plan are not specific final designs. It's just for financial planning, right? Particularly the 69th Street reconstruction includes more details than the other and details that I was uncomfortable with, but that's not a commitment to that particular design. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The narrative descriptions that are in your packet are pretty general at this point. They're basically just a framework of where we would start with our design process. Any of those large street reconstruction process would follow our in-depth public engagement process, multiple open houses, engagement opportunities, consultation with our transportation commission to guide those designs.
Thank you. And then the last question, the Crosstown noise wall, was there a different potential project for the east section that doesn't have a noise wall, or was the west section the only thing under consideration? By Veterans Park?
Yeah, so the west section is the only one that's scheduled at this time. There's a few complications with the east section in that it's essentially shared by Richfield and Minneapolis, since east of 62nd Street, sorry.
Yeah.
That's actually Minneapolis. And so we would need to get an agreement in place with Minneapolis to pursue that. That being said, we are talking as staff. We've talked recently about doing that, reaching out to Minneapolis and moving forward with a solicitation to MnDOT to support construction of a noise wall in that section as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe Director Asher wanted to add some comments as well.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify for the council that the work on Lindell Avenue that included the pedestrian upgrades and things like that, I believe that's in Project 1.
Yes, that's correct.
Other comments or questions? Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor. More comment. I just wanted to reiterate, it was on one of the slides, but to anyone, members of the public who are looking at this and looking at the price tag and wondering about that I think it's a good practice. It was decided long before I was on council, but a good practice to be doing, basically having the whole city chipping in for each of these major road construction projects rather than sticking special assessments of much higher numbers on the specific neighbors of the project. That we as a whole community have certainly benefited from the road reconstructions around the city on these major streets. And so that is why it is added to taxes and of the whole city and not just for the neighbors, that I think that in the long run really benefits the entire community. So I appreciate that we continue to approach our street projects that way.
Other comments or questions from council? Right.
Then I will open the public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this, you may come up to the microphone and identify yourself and give your address, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Are we also taking phone calls or just for people in person?
You know, I am not sure. I think we are doing phone calls, correct? Yep, looks like we are.
Then could we have the number repeated?
Thank you, Councilmember Semple. If people would like to call in live during our public hearing, you can call 612-861-0651, and you can have your comments heard by council. I do not currently have anybody on the line.
How long do you want to wait?
You can continue.
All right, it does not appear that anyone wants to speak at the public hearing, so I'm going to move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made by Councilmember Supple to close the public hearing and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The public hearing has been closed.
Then I will move to adopt the resolution approving the 5-year street reconstruction plan and authorizing the issuance of street reconstruction bonds to finance the 2022 to 2023 65th Street reconstruction project.
Second.
All right, the motion has been made to adopt the resolution by Councilmember Supple and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. Are there any other questions or comments from Councilmember on this item? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The resolution has been passed. Thank you. Then the next item also goes to Councilmember Supple.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, and it's also going to consider a resolution adopting the assessment for removal of diseased trees from private property to work ordered from January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. The health of trees within the municipal limits is threatened by shade tree diseases, and it is the city's responsibility to control and prevent the spread of these diseases. If the city deems it necessary to remove a diseased tree on private property, the property owners have 3 options available. 1, remove the tree themselves. 2, hire and pay for their own contractor. Or 3, hire their own contractor and request the cost of the tree removal be assessed against their property tax. In the period from January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, 12 property owners chose the 3rd option, and the total amount to be assessed is $41,183.29. And so I'm going to turn it over to staff to see if they want to add anything. And there was a question about how it gets added to the property taxes and whether it's a lien or not, if you could go into that.
Mayor, council members, thank you. As far as how the assessment works, I'd have to ask Mary to answer that question.
Or Mayor and Council. So the assessments are essentially, it's if the council approves this tonight, there will be a resolution that will be provided to the county auditor, and then those costs are certified to taxes, which means it's essentially like a lien against the property, which then gets collected with taxes next year. Does that answer the question?
Okay, so well, I'm going to open the public hearing, and then I believe the gentleman has the question that he can answer then. So if there's anybody that wants to call in, again, the number is 612-861-0651. And we have Mr. Smith that wanted to also come up and ask a question about this. So if you want to come up to the microphone and state your name and address.
Me. And I've lived in Richfield for 37 years. It's a great city, and we do a lot of wonderful things here. And I'm really happy to say that one of my trees was very close to the alleyway, but it was definitely on my property. I thought it might not be, but I had a surveyor, and he came in and said, "Yes, Brett, this was on your property." It had a horrible disease, and the forester came, and he did a great job. He said, "Brett, this tree is a hazard." It was about ready to fall on the neighbors or our garages in the hazard, so he took it out. And I don't have a lot of money right now, and he said that the city would do it, but they could put it on your property, on your property taxes. And I guess I'm okay with that, but what I'm wondering is if we could possibly put it as a singular lien, but it not be paid off until the house was sold. That is not an option, is that correct? In other words, if I could keep the amount on as a lien on the property, and then if I do go sell the house, or I can pay it off as an option somewhere between when I put it as a lien and then the time I leave. I'm sure I can pay it off in the future. There's no doubt about it. But right now it's a tough time with COVID and everything, and things have been really tough. The guys that did it did a great job, the city, the forester, everybody. But I'm just wondering how I'm going to pay this off. If I can get a property lien, which means I could sell it off completely when I pay the house off, or sometime in between there, rather than have it just accruing taxes. And then the other question I had was, it says I have till November 19th to pay it off. Would that be the amount here, or is there some interest included in on that? It says 1,720.40. So if I paid that off before the 19th of 2021, that would be the amount. Is that correct, Mary?
Mayor and Council, yes, that would be correct.
Okay.
There would not be interest if it was
Thank
paid
you.
off in full.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then is there a possibility I could get a lien on it? I mean, to keep it on my property without having to go on the taxes? Because that would help keep my taxes low. And as you know, they're going up. When I moved in 1985, I was paying $435 a year in taxes. And of course, that was 37 years ago. And they've been going up and down. I think last year they were about $1,600. What would that do? What if I put this on my property taxes? Would that probably a $300 increase on my property taxes per year for like 4 years or something like that? Could somebody answer that question?
Well, I'd be happy to speak with you too directly if you have specific questions, but generally, and I don't know the numbers, sir, I apologize.
I understand it.
The statute, the process is governed by state statute and city code, and essentially it's a payment in installments over a 5-year period.
Oh,
And that-
5-year.
Right, and so that's how the process works, and how the city is required to do it.
And that is the process. There would be no lien that would sit on my property that,
It's essentially like a lien, that's what an assessment is.
okay.
So if you were to move or sell the house, then that would be, and there was something left to pay off, then that would be something you'd work out with the buyer,
Okay.
so.
Maybe I should just leave it the way it is then. So my property taxes will go up by a certain amount over the 5-year period, but after that time, this amount should be paid off. If
And-
that's okay with the people here, I guess I'm okay with that then.
And Mr. Smith, I was going to bring your card back. Would you like to leave your contact information so that our staff can connect with you directly and answer your questions?
Okay.
Yep.
You-
Okay, I can do that.
Are you the mayor? Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. I didn't know. Okay. Nice to meet you, Mayor. Okay, so
All right, if you want to put your,
I will do that.
you can just leave it there and then our staff.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. I think that's just fine to be able, I think it's very good that they could help me, because that tree was a hazard, and the forester knew right away, and it was getting worse and worse, and my garage was threatened, and there was another garage that was threatened. So, and I didn't have the money, and it's still tight for me, and I got a construction project that's very important right now going on at my house for my son. We're building a new room. It's going to be beautiful. The inspectors and everyone are helping me, so I really praise your guys' help. So I put my phone number down here.
Yep.
Do you need any, is that
That's
fine?
good. Yep, your phone number is just fine, and then we'll
Okay.
follow up with you directly.
God bless you all.
Thank you.
Am I done now?
Yes, thank you so much.
God bless you. Keep up your good work. You've done a great job running our city, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. Am I free to leave now? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
All right.
here's the contact number. I'll leave it right here.
great.
And then I guess I'll just let it flow the way it is now. Is that correct? Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
All
you,
right.
guys.
Thank you so much.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Is there anyone else on the line that has called in?
Councilmember Supple, I do not have anybody on the line.
Then I would move to close the public hearing. Oh, excuse me.
Go ahead, Director Asher.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just reviewing the resolution that was submitted in the packet, and I believe there's an error.
Okay.
And it's a clarification under number 2, where it says such assessment shall be payable in no more than one annual installment. I believe that's over 5 years. That's indicated in the staff report itself.
Okay, so when we're voting on that resolution, it is going to be with the correction you just made, that it's over 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would second the motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. The motion has been made by Councilmember Supple to close the public hearing and seconded by Councilmember Wayland. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The public hearing has been closed.
Then I would move to approve the resolution with the correction that Director Asher just made to adopt the assessment for removal of diseased trees from private property for work ordered from January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Is that clear enough, or do I need to add more? All right, thank you.
A second.
The motion has been made to adopt the resolution by Councilmember Supple with the said amendment and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, and I forgot to ask, excuse me, are there any other comments or questions from council on this item?
It doesn't affect the vote, but just to be perfectly clear for anybody watching, this is trees within private property. This is not an assessment for boulevard tree work or anything that the city planted. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And the resolution has been approved. Thank you very much. The next item goes to Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
All right, this is a public hearing to consider resolutions adopting the annual Interstate Lindell Nicollet ILN project area assessment and proposed work for 2022. And I'll just say before I continue, I had to look this up because we have a very similarly named area along 66, but this is our 77th Street area. The ILN project area assessment was established to recover special maintenance expenses in the 77th Street area in 1988. Those services include maintenance and operation of irrigation systems, weed control, mowing, fertilization, trash and litter removal, and replantings. These current services are provided on both sides of the 77th Street wall. The maintenance functions are funded through a maintenance assessment on the 77th Street commercial properties. Does staff have anything to add?
Mayor, Councilmember Hayford O'Leary, I could just add that in 2020, these expenses were primarily for tree removals. We did a lot of tree removals, the trash collection, and then mowing through contractual services.
Thank you. I guess we will open the public hearing for this. Is anybody here for this public hearing in person? And you want to connect with Kelly?
Assistant Wynn, is there anyone on the phone for the public hearing?
Mayor, I do not have anybody on the line.
I think it's probably safe to, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary made the motion to close the public hearing, and it's been seconded by Councilmember Whalen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The public hearing has been closed.
Anything else before I make the motion? Nope. And these should be separate motions, Attorney Deaton?
Mayor, Councilmember Hayford O'Leary, yes, I think you should do separate
Okay.
motions on these.
All right, I move that we adopt a resolution adopting the assessment on the ILN project area for costs incurred to maintain the area for 2020.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary and seconded by Councilmember Whalen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I move we adopt a resolution ordering the undertaking of the current service project within the ILN project area for 2022.
Second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary and seconded by Councilmember Supple. Are there any other additional questions or comments? Councilmember Supple.
I just wanted to comment on this. I do a lot of walking around the neighborhood for exercise, and we're in this area, and it's really clear that the work is being put in and done carefully, and the weed control and the litter being picked up, and I just want to thank the crews that are working on that, because you can really see that it's doing a nice job of upkeep. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The resolution has been approved. Thank you. The next item goes to Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a public hearing regarding the assessment of delinquent utility accounts, false alarms, weed eradication charges, and vacant property registration fees to be certified to property taxes. So Minnesota state statute provide that certain unpaid charges may be assessed against the benefiting property. Chapter 7 of the Richfield Code of Ordinances provides that unpaid water, sanitary sewer, stormwater, and streetlight charges may be certified to the county auditor to be included in a property owner's annual property tax bill. And then several sections of the city charter provide that the city is allowed to specially assess delinquent fees. City code also authorizes a certification fee to be charged against each delinquent account. By certifying the delinquent charges to property taxes, the city is assured of collection of the charges. The delinquent accounts must be certified to the county auditor in order for the city to collect the charges through the property tax payment process. Property owners have been notified that any unpaid charges or fees may be assessed against the property. Does staff have anything to add for this item?
I don't. I can take any questions, Councilmember Whalen.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like we do have a question. Sorry, Councilmember Supple?
I just had a question, under the public health and safety hazard. Can you give some examples? Is it clearing away something that's dangerous, or what would we be doing?
I don't have detail on it. I can get you some examples later, sorry.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious because, I mean, weed eradication, some of that's pretty self-evident, but I didn't know what the public safety was.
Okay, with that, then I would open the public hearing, I believe our final public hearing. Is there anyone in person who would like to speak to this item? Or Assistant Wynn, is there anyone on the phone?
I do not currently have anybody on the line.
Okay, we'll give another 30 seconds. Councilmember Supple, you had the number written down. Would you be willing to repeat that?
Sure, it's 612-861-0651.
Then I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made by Councilmember Whalen to close the public hearing and seconded by Councilmember Supple. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The public hearing has been closed.
Then I would make a motion to approve the attached resolution authorizing certification of unpaid water, sanitary sewer, stormwater, and streetlight charges, false alarm fees, weed eradication charges, and vacant property registration fees to the county auditor to be collected with other taxes on said properties.
Does that also include the health and safety ones, since that wasn't listed here?
Yes, that includes public safety ones. It just wasn't listed.
Thank you.
Was there a second?
No.
I will second.
All right. The motion has been made by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. Are there any other questions or comments from council? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. The motion has been passed. Thank you. The next item goes to Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
All right, this item is to consider approval of a resolution accepting the Portland Gateway Report and directing staff to consider its recommendations when evaluating proposals and policies in the study area. In 2019, the cities of Richfield and Bloomington were selected for a 2020 Congress for New Urbanism Legacy Project. Legacy projects offer municipalities in the area of the CNU annual conference the opportunity to host a 4-day neighborhood design workshop with leading national urban design firms around projects related to the mission of CNU. The combined application of Richfield and Bloomington for the Portland Gateway area was selected, and the cities worked with national design consultants from TSW Planners and Architects, as well as Tool Design Group, to explore the revitalization of this area in the context of significant upcoming transportation changes. The Portland Gateway area is generally located along 494 between Nicollet and 12th Avenues and 76th Street and American Boulevard. Although the pandemic caused the cancellation of the CNU annual conference and the 4-day workshop, city staff and the design team worked to virtually engage the community and prepare a report that included key observations and neighborhood input that we want to acknowledge and use to inform policy actions in this geographic area. The attached report provides the following: a summary of existing conditions, area context, and existing plans and policy documents. It identifies a walkability enhancement zone as an area that could be evaluated for broader connectivity improvements, design standards, and policy recommendations. Valuable input from stakeholders, area business owners, property owners, residents, MnDOT, and other agencies. Recommendations for general design standards for the public realm, and a matrix of action items to consider related to redevelopment alternatives, affordable housing, mobility, and parks, open spaces, and public realm. Staff is recommending that the City Council accept the attached report and direct staff to further explore potential adoption of specific policies and ideas discussed within. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended this acceptance on September 27th, 2021. Does staff have anything to add?
Mayor, members of the council, I'll just reiterate that this was not a full-blown land use planning study like we would normally do for a corridor. It was a short study involving some outside experts where we could get some creative ideas. These ideas haven't been fully vetted, but they are important, and we did gather important feedback that we'd particularly like to apply to the 494 MnDOT project. So we think it's important for the council to acknowledge and accept this plan so that we can present it in that manner and evaluate some of the creative solutions that came out of it.
Could you describe what sort of the next steps would be for staff? And I realize it's not going to be like next month, but in general, what would happen in the coming years that would relate to this document?
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. So there are a number of recommendations specifically related to pedestrian opportunities and right-of-way improvements that we will begin evaluating as part of the improvements with the access reconfiguration on 494. There are also some recommendations related to the park and connections north of 77th Street that we'll start evaluating with the Community Services Commission. In general, also, there has been some interest in relooking at our 494 corridor plan. And so this would be a good starting point to begin those discussions and vetting those, both in terms of the legal structure here in Minnesota, but also with the broader community along the corridor.
Thank you. And then just a sort of comment for the council is just to emphasize how there's a large gulf between the ideas presented here, which I mostly agree with, and the MnDOT project that is nearly coming before us. So I would encourage us to look very critically at the MnDOT project and acknowledge that there are a lot of ideas here that I hope we can consider and advocate for to the extent we can at this point in the process, because I think it's just unfortunate this couldn't have been like 5 years before the engineering work on 494. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the attached resolution accepting the Portland Gateway report and directing staff to consider its recommendations when considering code amendments, policy and programming, and land use applications in the Portland Gateway area.
Second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary and seconded by Councilmember Supple. Any questions or comments on this item? Councilmember Whalen.
I'll just say that I appreciate greatly most of this report. Certainly the public input that was gathered. I think it was titled like goals and principles. There's a slide with like 5 big picture ideas of what we should be prioritizing in this area, and I completely agree there. But I am a little concerned, and I think I have a question in a moment that I think will clarify this. But there's some specific ideas in there that are, to me, feel disconnected from the actual use of this area. For example, there's a proposed mid-block pedestrian crossing that goes between single-family homes and a fence that does not seem like a good use. Certainly, there's several ideas that are just completely out of touch with where the 494 project is and what's already been decided. And so I believe that accepting this report is that we will consider it, we will take these ideas and certainly the input and use that in our future planning, but that it is not a commitment to each of the specific action steps that are recommended. Is that correct?
Councilmember Whalen, that is correct. This is, pardon me, by accepting this plan, we're just agreeing, the council is just agreeing that staff should explore these ideas, talk about them more. We're not agreeing to implement any of the policies in the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? I'd just like to echo actually both of the comments from Councilmember Hayford O'Leary and Councilmember Whalen. I remember when we had the study session on with the group, I had similar thoughts around the disconnect in terms of, what makes sense for our community here in Richfield, and then also wishing that this was something that we could have done earlier. And I know that our staff has just done a really exceptional job in really pushing MnDOT as hard as possible with the 494 project and the policymakers that represent Richfield on the Policy Advisory Committee as well. So while there is that mismatch in terms of this proposal or this project and MnDOT, I definitely think staff and council members are doing a great job to push as much as we can to make sure that project does the best for our residents. So just wanted to echo those comments and also say we are pushing hard with every bit we can on that on MnDOT on the 494 project. Other comments or questions from folks? All right, the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. The motion is approved. The next item goes to Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is to consider approval of a conditional use permit for 817 66th Street East to allow a Class 1 restaurant. Hempel Companies is acquiring the property located at 817 66th Street East and has submitted an application for a CUP, conditional use permit, to allow a full-service restaurant within the existing structure. The property is currently zoned general commercial, or C2. Full-service restaurants, Class 1, are listed as a conditional use in the C2 district. The zoning code distinguishes a full-service restaurant from a traditional or cafeteria-style restaurant, Class 2, in that alcoholic beverages are able to be served in a full-service restaurant. The proposed use would include an associated ice cream and coffee shop with a walk-up service window. Proposed hours of operation would be 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. for the restaurant and 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. for ice cream and coffee shop. The proposal includes interior remodeling and exterior renovations to the building's facade, but no building additions. The application initially included a variance request to reduce the minimum number of required parking stalls. Revised plans have been submitted which no longer require consideration of a variance to the parking requirement. The parking requirement is satisfied with 24 existing on-site stalls in combination with on-site space to the rear of the building that is able to be converted to 7 parking stalls. Staff is recommending a condition of approval stating that if ongoing parking spillover is observed, then these stalls must be improved. It should also be noted that there's a cross-access easement between the subject property and the adjoining parcel to the west, addressed as 813 66th Street East. The Planning Commission approved a motion recommending that the City Council approve the CUP with findings that the request meets ordinance requirements. Does staff have anything to add for this item?
Yes, Mayor, members of the council. I'll just remind you of the process related to a CUP and reference our pyramid of discretion. Generally, the council and the policymakers have the most discretion at the level when we are adopting a comprehensive plan and adopting policies as in our zoning code, when we're writing the codes. At this point, when you're considering a conditional use permit, you are considering whether or not it meets the codes that you have already adopted. So the 8 conditions listed in your staff report are what you are considering tonight. You are considering whether or not this proposal meets the conditions that you have in place. You have limited discretion in this matter. I'm happy to answer any questions about the conditions or about the specific proposal.
Before discussion then, I'd make the motion to approve the attached resolution granting a conditional use permit for 817 66th Street East to allow a Class 1 restaurant.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. Comments or questions from council? Councilmember Seppel.
So I understand that this meets the requirements and we don't have a lot of discretion. I do hope, though, that the new restaurant will consider the neighborhood, being that the current restaurant does not stay open till midnight and that they need to be good neighbors. And so while that's not something that we're voting on right now, I would urge, if they're listening right now, that they be good neighbors and consider the neighborhood around them. Thank you.
Other comments? Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
I had questions with the condition about the proof of parking. How it says ongoing spillover parking is observed. As we've all experienced, different folks have different opinions about how much is too much street parking. Does that mean any customer parking is on the street? Is it a certain percentage of the block? What's too much that requires us to make them pave those spots?
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary, in general, we'll be looking for issues that would create safety concerns or continual overflow. If the parking lot is observed to be not adequate most times or every day for a period of time, we would begin discussing with the property owner the need to improve those 7 stalls.
Okay, and if that is ordered, is that able to be done at the staff level, or does that come back to us?
We would do that at a staff level.
Okay.
That part of the condition here is that the community development department would approve that.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a reminder to me again that it's unfortunate that we have this outstanding expense to residents. I think it's an appropriate way to implement our current policy, which is exactly what we're doing here, but I wish that we did not have these parking requirements that leave a business owner with a question mark of tens of thousands of dollars that they may or may not have to pave. I think that's a choice that doesn't benefit businesses coming to Richfield. For the purposes of what we're considering tonight, I think this is appropriate, and I will certainly vote to support this. I also did just want to acknowledge that I know there have been strong opinions about this, and should this move forward, that a lot of folks will really miss local roots, and we really value them. Obviously, we can't consider the specific tenant or anything like that. It's just about the land use, and I think from the land use perspective, this is a good project, and it meets our requirements.
Thank you. Councilmember Whalen.
Yeah, to that point, I want to acknowledge that our local roots owner is here, and that I think certainly some of the community conversation around this has been centered around thinking the decision is if we keep local roots or have a new business, and that I thoroughly enjoy local roots and visit regularly, and I hope that it works for them to stay in town, but that's not the decision that's before us, that a private change in ownership has happened or will be happening soon, and that, again, to staff's comments and other council members' comments, that the decision before us is if this new use fits the area based on our zoning codes, and I think it does. I think the primary concerns I've heard from neighbors are around parking and the noise and activity late into the night. I think one of the reasons that this is a good use is that it's the closest spot for people visiting our ice arena right across the street. I think that there's a good chance that many of the people visiting the restaurant will be people who are in between tournaments or something at the ice arena, that they may decide for any number of reasons to move their car, but I think others will just walk over. I think having the parking, I resonate with Councilmember Hayford O'Leary's thoughts about that's an expense that may get added sort of unexpectedly later on, but I do appreciate that we're not requiring them to pave that area immediately. I know that the Local Roots has used that for outdoor seating, which in the last year has been especially nice and helpful to have more outdoor seating. And so I think the word improve those spaces feels a little unfortunate, since I think parking spaces certainly are useful, but don't necessarily feel like an improvement. But in any regard, I just, yes, setting aside the the emotional response to the fact that Local Roots cannot stay there, it is looking like, that setting that part aside, I am excited for another restaurant in East Richfield, and I think that it will, both the full restaurant itself and the walk-up service, to be so close to a bunch of other great amenities in our city makes sense.
Thank you, Councilmember Whalen. I will just add a couple comments along the vein of just communicating kind of the role of the Planning Commission and the Council on the conditional use permit. So the Planning Commission, I reviewed the meeting and the comments and questions and concerns from our residents, as well as the petition and the feedback that the Planning Commission received from folks on this and the presentation of the developer. So the Planning Commission, the guide that they have to use as, and this is the same for the City Council, is does this meet the 8 different conditional use permits requirements and findings? And so when I was speaking to staff today about the different concerns of the residents that were brought up at the Planning Commission and how that would or would not play a role in these 8 conditions, I just wanted to walk through that. And before I do that, I wanted to ask clarification to Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. You're saying when you made the comment about parking and a potential addition of a couple $1,000s more, you mean because they may have to add that parking later?
Yes, and just to be clear, I do agree with Councilmember Whalen that it's definitely better that it's not now, but yes, it's a potential future expense.
Okay. So one of the questions that folks talked about was the parking. And when I was looking at the plans and hearing the information at the Planning Commission meeting, the proposed amount of seating versus what is there at Local Roots was, one of the reasons that people were saying there's going to be more people there and we're going to need more parking. That parking is already tight, given the seating that Local Roots has and what this proposal is proposing. When I connected with staff, they had said that parking is decided by square footage and not by seating of the restaurant. So the square footage is staying the same in both situations. So that is how the parking requirements are being made. Is that correct, staff?
Mayor, that is correct. Approximately in 2008, the city moved away from calculating parking based on seats and moved to a square footage. That's because seating can change so significantly. You can show one thing on the plans and then drastically change the number of seats.
Thank you. And so I did want to make that clarification. That was one item at the Planning Commission meeting that I wanted to visit. And then going back to that item on the parking, is there any way can you talk through again, ongoing parking spillovers observed, the stalls must be improved. Is there any way to be more clear on kind of the timeline? When is that threshold hit? I know that is a concern of the neighbors. Is there any more detail that could be given on that?
Mayor, if the council has specific thresholds that they'd like to incorporate into the resolution, that could certainly be done. I think, primarily we will be initially looking at safety concerns. If there are problems with getting out of driveways, making turns, sight lines, roadway width, things like that, those would be our primary concerns. Otherwise, we would look for a pattern. But if you have specific parameters in mind, you could certainly add them to the resolution.
Okay. And when it's mentioned here, spillover, so ongoing parking spillover and other situations with other developments, like what constitutes just ongoing, just in general, with other developments that you've seen?
Mayor, I think that varies significantly depending on the development. Typically, when a new use opens, it's exceptionally popular, and there may be spillover parking effects for the short term. The community development department and engineering departments tend to look at it on a little bit of a longer time frame to let things settle down, let the newness wear off a little bit, and then look for a pattern. I'd expect that we'd be watching this development fairly closely for the first 6 months to a year to see if patterns develop where there are conditions that it's impossible for people who live on the block to find parking or exceptionally difficult, things like that.
Thank you. And then a couple other concerns that were mentioned at the Planning Commission meeting that I just want to bring up again so folks can understand how it fits or does not fit within these 8 considerations that we're limited by in making our decision. So one was the fact that they have a bar, a rather large bar, where they would possibly be serving hard liquor, and that they have longer hours of operation. So when I asked about the difference between the existing restaurant there, Local Roots, the type of alcohol they sell, and the hours of operation versus the proposed, I guess it's addition of hours and increase in types of alcohol. In this vote and consideration, it's a liquor license, and it doesn't differentiate like in other situations where it's just beer and wine versus alcohol in these 8 conditions, because this is zoning specific.
Mayor, that is correct. The zoning code defines Class 1 restaurants as those that serve intoxicating beverages. It doesn't differentiate between a beer and wine license and a liquor license. So Local Roots is now serving beer and wine, and the difference does not matter in terms of applying the zoning code.
Thank you. That was one question I know that one concern that people had, and then I thank you for just making that clarification for us. And I'm trying to think of any of the other items that I wanted to bring up. Those were the main items that I wanted to bring up and just clarify with our community members, and I was making the clarification myself as well as I was reviewing the comments. We have these 8 items to go by, and Local Roots currently, meets these conditions as a restaurant, and as this proposed restaurant, it also meets these conditions. And to say whether it would be for the parking reasons or the hours of operation or the types of alcohol, these are not considerations that we can take into account for this application, and that then would also apply to the existing use. So really, some of those things that were brought up, while they're very legitimate concerns from the community, they are not things within the purview of these 8 conditions that we're able to take into account. From my end, I will be voting in support of this, not because I want to, because I would say this is a very hard decision for me personally as well, given that Local Roots there's no other restaurant like Local Roots in our community, period. And I don't like to see Local Roots going through this and our small businesses going through this process. And unfortunately, with the conditional use permit review that's before us, these are the 8 conditions that we have. Does it meet it? Yes or no? And when I'm bound by that, I have to vote in support. So I did want to make some of those clarifications because I know residents did come to the Planning Commission with their concerns, and I do know Local Roots is here, a small business that everybody here in Richfield absolutely loves. in both Sabout and visits all the time. So it's personally very hard as well. Councilmember Supple.
Can I add a comment after the vote, or it's not about what we're going to be voting on? Sure, should I do it now?
Could you say that again, a comment after the vote?
Well, I
or-
just wanted to make a comment, but
Yep,
it's
go ahead.
not-
We're still doing discussion.
Oh, well, I just wanted to thank Local Roots for all that they've added to our community, and I'm hoping that we can find a place for you somewhere in the community to remain with us.
Thank you, Councilmember Supple. Other comments? Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
Just two quick things. I did want to be clear with the parking issues, although it would be a longer timeline to potentially make them pave those additional spots. Regular parking rules still apply, right? If their driveway is blocked, they can call the police. Like, people still are not empowered to park illegally.
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary, absolutely. And
Okay.
if there are parking issues, they should absolutely call the police and let us know so we can take care of that.
Okay, thank you for that. And I do, again, I value local roads. I definitely agree with everything that's been said there. But I do also want to acknowledge, I want to welcome this new small business to our community as well. I'm particularly excited the improvements to the building look really nice. So I mourn and I hope that Local Roads is able to find a new space, but I'm also very welcoming and excited for this new project.
Thank you, Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. Other comments? Councilmember Whalen.
I'll just say that I hesitate to say anything because I try not to make more of meetings about parking than needs to be. But if residents nearby, like this is my ward, if you have concerns about parking, please reach out to me. But I do really appreciate staff's emphasis on safety being the concern and functionality, that there are certainly people in our community and everywhere who have a view that any on-street parking means there's not enough parking somewhere, and that's just not how our city's designed or how our ordinances are designed. And so it may be a change, but would urge neighbors, if you see safety or functionality concerns, please do reach out so we can keep track of those and address them as needed.
Thank you. Other comments? All right, I know we were in discussion for a while, so the motion was made by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. The motion has been approved. The next item is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I have an update on COVID from our public health administrator, Jennifer Anderson. Richfield has 152 new cases since the last council meeting of September 28th, and it puts us at 4,574 with another death. We are at 48 total. Bloomington cases are 10,973, and Edina cases are 5,441. Case rates continue to rise in all three cities. There is no sign of plateauing or decreasing, and vaccination rates are flat. Richfield has 2 schools on MDH's list of cases in pre-K through grade 12. These schools have reported 5 or more confirmed cases. It's Richfield Dual Language School and Richfield Senior High School. Richfield has 2 senior living facilities reporting an exposure in a resident, staff, or visitor. Havenwoods Senior Living and Village Shores. Again, vaccines remain the only sure way out of the COVID-19. And then I have an update on our organized hauling program. And as you know, and we've talked about a lot, is any program that is that massive and you're trying to transition those many households, there's going to be hiccups, of course. And in general, it has gone really smoothly, especially for Republic and Aspen. Waste Management had some problems because they did not bring enough staff with them to do the cart transition. And so as of Wednesday, they were behind. They had not even finished Monday yet. We pulled staff together, met with their upper management both on Wednesday evening and Thursday. And we reminded them about the liquidated damages clause in in our contract and what they were obligated to do. They then brought on more crews and started to catch up. They also shifted to just distributing the carts because then that is less complication going forward. So they got all the carts distributed. It was either Saturday or Sunday, and now are picking up the carts. My understanding is that they've done a first pass of all the pickups, and they've gotten all the carts distributed, and now are getting work orders from us about correct. Aspen and Republic have been working on those corrections since yesterday. Losing track of my days. We have been doing our best to communicate well about this. Our communications manager, Neil Ruland, has been doing it, practically 24/7. He's also been helping respond. Rachel Lindholm, our sustainability specialist, of course, is leading us in all of this. And she, at one point, we had reassigned 5 different staffers to help her with it. We're averaging about 100 calls a day, and this has been for the past week, and we have even more emails. I'm really, really appreciative for the staff that have helped out. I don't know if, management analyst Swanson is here. He definitely got pulled in and was really helpful because he has experience in this. Also, even like Assistant Community Development Director Haleman was helping out. So it really was an all-in effort. Mostly residents are frustrated if they don't get the carts that they wanted, or they're confused when they didn't get them picked up or distributed on the day. And those questions are pretty easy to answer and move on. And they have really appreciated Rachel making herself so available. There are still some frustrations with the program in general. And right now we're fielding mostly calls that they're frustrated about a mandatory organic charge. And we've explained to them that that is similar to the recycling program, and that ultimately, because our landfills in the Twin Cities are filling up, that by diverting from that waste stream, we're ultimately hopefully going to have a more sustainable and cost-effective program, because those costs at the landfills are ultimately going to go up. So I don't know if you have any questions on either the COVID numbers or the organized hauling program.
Councilmember Supple.
I just wanted to add thank you to all of the staff for being there to answer questions for residents, because they've gone above and beyond, and I'm sure the community, we all really appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
Just to clarify for residents, if they still have incorrect cart issues, should they be telling the city that or their hauler?
My understanding is that the calls are going directly to Aspen now, and their customer service is handling it. I'd have to get back to you about Republic and Waste Management. I think the calls still need to come to us.
Okay.
And we're giving them the work order.
Okay.
But you can always try the hauler first, and if you're not getting good service, then come to us, and we'll get it fixed.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Whalen.
Similar clarification question. I know there was, I'm not remembering what it was, but there was a date in the materials that were shared and on the website for folks who got the correct item for now, but want to, I guess, 2 separate things, want to join the organics program, but had missed the original deadline, or they had wanted to change cart sizes or the type of services they got, but had missed that deadline. Can you remind us what the timing is for when folks should do either of those things?
Yeah, and I'm looking at management analyst Swanson because I'm not sure I know the dates. I do know the process. The haulers have asked that that they have time to do the initial transactions, and then they can get to those corrections. But I'll let management analyst.
Mayor and Council, I think the haulers actually, we were thinking about more later, a couple weeks from now, even maybe late December, when we start really kind of switching out those parts that were delivered correctly. From what my understanding right now, both Aspen and Republic will actually start making those switches if a resident wants, gets a little bit and goes, that's not going to work, and then wants a different cart. Or if they want to now get the organics cart, I think Waste Management is also starting to make those changes, but they are also trying to recover carts on the street. So I think maybe, Aspen Republic, if residents have that question, they can call in. I think both of those callers actually have their systems updated with the new residents account information. But if it's a Waste Management customer, maybe direct them to the city, and then we can follow up directly with with Waste.
Okay, thank you.
Are there comments or questions in the city manager's report? Okay, Councilmember Whalen.
I just thank you for answering the questions. Comments-wise, just wanted to absolutely repeat a thank you. I'm in the Tuesday section, and so just this morning had my organics picked up for the first time, and that was exciting. Also had my first week where the garbage wasn't picked up because I'm doing the new every other week garbage program, and so I'm obviously there's a lot happening with the transition. I had shared this with City Manager Rodriguez. I've gotten a couple calls from people who've had issues, but by and large, most of the people reaching out have been really impressed with how smoothly it went. And yes, I'm just really excited for not just how the transition is going, but the program, the long term, what this makes possible. And then lastly, I feel like we shouldn't have to say this anymore, but just given the COVID update, just will encourage people again to go get vaccinated. My wife works at a school. It is significantly impacting her stress level to know that she is around hundreds of kids each day who cannot get vaccinated, and that there are still so many adults who are choosing to not be vaccinated, that we have the power to move past this. We're approaching now a full year soon of having vaccinations, that this is the path forward. This is how we move to a more normal society, and how we can get back to more of the activities we love. And that especially hearing how much it is still impacting schools and our kids, that this is just something that we need to do. So I would encourage anyone listening, if you know someone, if you yourself are not vaccinated, I'd be happy to talk with you. If you know someone who's not vaccinated and have been avoiding talking to them because it's messy or tense, please circle back and do that. The future of our community depends on it.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, City Manager. And I will save my accolades for my hats off. Claims and payroll. Who would like to move claims and payroll?
I can do that. I will move approval of claims and payroll.
Second.
Claims and payroll has been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Claims and payroll has been approved. The next item is hats off to Hometown Hits. Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. Two quick items. One, I just want to again celebrate the 50th anniversary of Wood Lake Nature Center. There's a good turnout despite some pending rain for that celebration. I got there about halfway through, and most of the cake had already been eaten, so I think that means there was a good turnout. But lots of good activities, lots of people sharing their love for Wood Lake, which was great. So thank you to everyone who helped organize that event, both the Friends of Wood Lake, the staff there at the Nature Center, and in the rec department. And then lastly, just a reminder that I will say again once more, 3 weeks from today is the last day to vote, but it's already open. You can see the voting booths out by our DMV area, and so would encourage people to cast your votes for school board this year, sometime between now and November 2nd.
Thank you, Councilmember Whalen. Councilmember Seppel.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to add on the organized hauling is it was a noticeable reduction in traffic this morning with only having one company picking things up, and so that was an immediate effect that happened. I want to make an announcement. The City of Richfield is looking for artists to display at both the community center and out here in the City Hall display cases. So if you are an artist and you would like to share your work with the public, you can please contact Mary Kay Champa over at the community center, and she will help you set up. We've done several of these in the past, and we're always looking for new artists. Also, the Richfield Arts Commission and Wellhaven Pet Health is sponsoring something called Dogs Take the Stage. So on Saturday, October 16th at the Band Shell at 5:30 p.m., we are going to be having dogs in costumes. So if you want to dress your dog up and have them parade and be part of Dogs Take the Stage, that is Saturday, October 16th at 5:30 p.m., and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The next day on October 17th is time for the humans to take the stage, and so there's going to be Zumba. It's been happening the last 2 Sundays, and it sounds like it's been a lot of fun from what I'm hearing, and it's at 3:45, and that is open to the public at the Band Shell. So thank you all, and that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Supple. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
Yeah, I certainly also wanted to mention hauling. I'm just so grateful. Our staff have done an awesome job with this, and also just our residents. I know there's the patience needed. Not everything is happening perfectly. It is happening really well for this process, but I certainly appreciate people who are figuring it out and being patient and making sure it gets done right. I'm generally excited about the acceptance this has had in our community, and I think it's a good example for other communities as well. And then particularly, I just mentioned this between our work session, but I thought it was really cool. There was somebody who was opposed to the policy who actually posted how great staff were and how responsive Rachel was to his concerns. So even though he didn't like it, he thought the staff service in representing the policy was terrific, which is, I think, very impressive. The other thing I want to mention is Portland Avenue. There's been this repaving plus project going on, and for anybody who might wonder about it, it's not a badly done reconstruction. It's a really well done like surface maintenance repaving. So it included a whole bunch of stuff you don't normally see in repaving. It's going to make it a much safer street to bike on, to walk on. It included a lot of accessibility upgrades as well. So definitely check it out. The paving's done. The striping should be done soon. And I'm excited to bike on it ASAP.
Thank you, Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. And I just want to give my accolades to Rachel, who has just been doing such an exceptional job responding to our residents. Our recreation department, they were just in here a couple council meetings ago for this award that they received for their amazing response to COVID and making sure families were out and active and had plenty of ways to stay connected during COVID, and now taking on this huge citywide process of organized hauling and doing it so well, being so responsive, and bringing the whole staff along, having people join in. We have great advocates in the city that I think have turned into City of Richfield advocates because of the work of Rachel and staff, as Councilmember Hayford O'Leary said. So a huge thank you to St. Rachel, and the shout out goes to you, Rachel, and all of our staff that have been working on organized hauling. Thank you for all that you've been doing. It is probably one of the smoothest organized hauling processes we've had in recent times here in the metro area, and that is because of our exceptional staff. I did want to add a couple events that are coming up because of Halloween. So I know that there's a trunk or treat at Morris Nielsen Funeral Chapel that is this Saturday at their address at 6527 Portland Avenue from 4 to 7 p.m. So kids can go and do their trick-or-treating in the parking lot. There's also one on Saturday, October 20th at 2 p.m. at Richfield United Methodist Church. I think that's actually in Minneapolis. Then Woodlake Nature Center has their half-haunted Halloween event on October 23rd at 2 p.m. at Woodlake Nature Center. So there's a lot of fun things going on. There's also a haunted house that residents put on in their front yard. They have been for a few years now, I think on the corner of 10th and 73rd, I believe. But 2 Halloweens ago, there was probably 1,000 people there. And it's just a really awesome community put on event in someone's front yard where there's a haunted house. So a lot of fun things happening in the community. And I think that's all I have. All right. Thank you, everyone. I will adjourn our meeting. Have a good night.